Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over the market. Let's talk about what is happening to Tesla, what we can expect moving into tomorrow and really the rest of this week after FOMC just got finished. Surprisingly pretty muted reaction across the board, to be completely honest. NVDA got a spike towards the end of the day unrelated to FOMC, but I'm a little surprised at how muted the reaction was. But tomorrow could be interesting. Sometimes the real move of FOMC happens the day after. So let's see. But I'll give you my thoughts regardless. So if you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts, and the charts updates, well, I do share my thoughts with my members on YouTube every single day the market is open, as the market is actually trading throughout the entire day. So definitely check it out. That link is down below. Constantly sharing these updates if you press that join button, which you can see here. But these are the three tiers. Tier 1, $3 a month USD, gives you access to my Tesla daily updates constantly throughout the day as the market's trading, options flow, technical analysis. Tier 2 for $5 a month is including NVIDIA as well, plus the first tier. And then tier 3, which is a new tier for $6.99 a month, includes the first two tiers, plus I do chart requests and I share updates on non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA stocks as well. So link is below. But jumping into it, Tesla closing the day pretty flat. Honestly, all things considered, pretty flat. 0.3% on the day, closing at 276. And yeah, let's see what tomorrow has in store. So the way I look at Tesla is this, right? My overall perspective hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. You can even argue that this is kind of like a small little bear flaggy type situation being formed that looks something along the lines of this, right? Give or take. But my overall perspective hasn't changed. And these are the main levels I'll go over right now for my perspectives to change. Now, I still lean to the downside. However, we did actually technically make a new low today, right? If you zoom in on it, you can see we did actually breach new lows here, right? From the recent lows, I should add, right? Ever since we started making these lower lows, lower highs, we did technically make a slight lower low. But these lower lows are getting less lower lows, if that makes sense, right? Which could be a potential, nice thing setting up here. Let's see. The MACD on the 1 hour chart, starting to get close to flipping bullish, right? It's not there yet. Obviously, we had a false one over here. So, let's not get too excited just yet, but, it's trying to do it. It's trying to do it, right? But the way I look at it when it comes to also just strictly levels is this, right? Like I said, ever since this false breakout we had up here, we've been making lower lows, lower highs, right? And technically we made a lower low today, technically. So the way I look at it is, if Tesla can break above this high right here that we recently set at around 278 to 280, that alone could be enough to tell me that, okay, you know what? Maybe the bulls are actually ready to reverse this and at least have a look for a shot at breaking out of this bull flag once and for all, essentially, and actually make its way to 300. However, granted, this lower low isn't it's not a very big lower low, I guess you can say. It's not a very convincing lower low. It's a very slightly lower low. If you want to be on the more safe side, that would still be a break of this high over here, closer to $283 to $284 per share, right? So depending on how risk tolerant you are. But breaking above at least this level gives me signs. Breaking above this level up here of about 283/4 is even further signs that the bulls are here to, really try to reverse the stock. And then, of course, we have naturally that actual a bull flag that we're in, which also on the daily chart, the one I've been talking about for quite some time, right? Remember, even when before it even started, I was talking about how I would want to see a nice little bull flag on declining volume, which is exactly what we're getting, almost to perfection, consistent declining volume on Tesla stock. Right into that moving average, or the 20-day moving average, or the market bias, essentially, you can see here, right? It's all happening almost exactly the way I wanted it to happen, which is good. Now, it doesn't mean that we're done yet. We could still be in this correction. I'm not saying we're out of it just yet on the short term. However, the longer term, if I were to fast forward 2 weeks from now, let's say, middle of the month, or maybe even slightly past the middle of the month, as it stands right now, assuming something catastrophic doesn't happen, of course, which, with this administration, and this market, you really sometimes never know. It's pretty random. Assuming nothing completely weird and, out of the ordinary happens, yeah, I do expect Tesla to be higher from here. I expect it to be somewhere around these general levels right around here, right? That's kind of my current expectation, I guess you can say, on Tesla stock. So let's see how this plays out. But again, this is the short term, right? The short term, I'm still not actually bullish short term. Like, again, when I say short term, I'm talking about the next few days, maybe even early next week. Not yet. Because to me, as long as we're below these two levels up here, depending on, again, how risk tolerant you are, mainly because, this, I guess, it is a lower low, but it's just so minimal. I'm not sure. I'm honestly not even sure how to perceive it, to be completely honest with you. So to be safe, I would argue even above this kind of 283 level, which, if it were to happen by, let's say, Monday or Friday, this Friday or next Monday, it kind of lines up with that, resistance point of the bull flag as well, right? It's a very similar resistance point if we were to kind of, make our way back up there, right? What I'm trying to say is, below those levels, essentially, I still lean that, there is a higher risk to the downside than there is to the upside. Now that gets even further confirmed if we actually lose 270. We've actually been holding 270 very, very nicely. So if we lose 270, that could be what actually brings us down here. However, if we continue holding 270 and we start breaking these levels instead, then the bulls are really starting to come in, in full force. And I believe that they will most likely reverse the stock because, again, like I said, on the larger time frame, I do still lean on the more bullish perspective. I do think the bulls overall, again, thinking, several weeks out, have the upper hand. The daily still looks pretty good to me. We revert to the mean, so we're not, comically, this wasn't comically, but we're not overbought, essentially, right? We're not overextended, right? We had a nice lower volume reversion to the mean, and I think it's setting up with a pretty textbook looking both like you really can't get a more textbook looking both like than this, at least in my opinion, right? The weekly is still looking pretty solid, right? Very evidently taking, this range right over here and turning it into a support that obviously was a resistance, right? So everything is happening as you would expect. Now, obviously, you never know in this market, right? Especially this kind of market. You really just never know for sure, right? Things can get derailed. Honestly, at this point, it feels like with the blink of an eye, right? Just one post, one message, one even line from like Trump or someone like that, it can technically get derailed. But just looking strictly at the technicals and strictly just what the candles are telling me, the candles are telling me that that's not going to happen. The candles are telling me that the bulls are going to win this, right? Again, short term, the bears are still winning, but very short term, but medium term ish, if you will, later through this month, middle of the month to maybe slightly later parts of this month, I think the bulls will be winning this, right? I'll be pretty surprised if they don't, to be completely honest with you. And that's just the way I'm perceiving it, right? This nice, beautiful looking bull flag. And, if you measure the move, right? The way you measure a bull flag move roughly, again, take this with a grain of salt, but roughly, is you go from the lower point to the top point where the flag is, right? Or where the pole is, rather, I should say. And this is roughly where that bull flag began, right? Somewhere around here. And then you take this right here, and then wherever we break out, so let's say we break out somewhere around here, roughly. This has a measured move to around the mid 300s even, right? That becomes a very real possibility to the mid 300s, right? Go to the weekly. That's roughly where that weekly market bias is sitting as well, right? That kind of closer to the mid 300s, 330-ish, give or take, 340 maybe even. I think worst case 320 personally, but I think the best case, at least for this month, closer to 350, 360. That is like the best case. So that's like that range I can see for this month, assuming the bulls, which I think they will, continue playing this out the way I expect them to. So let's see how this actually plays out, guys. Let's see how this ultimately forms and whatnot, right? But all in all, it's looking pretty damn solid on the daily chart, right? So if you have the patience, again, not financial advice, just my opinion, I do think it's setting up pretty nicely, actually. Pretty nicely. So let's just see how this plays out. Let's see how this plays out. I mean, this could technically also be a sideways bull flag if I, for instance, remove these for now and I instead go like something like this, right? This could just be a horizontal bull flag that looks something like this, right? We could just be getting one of these bad boys as well. Also a possibility, right? But let's see how it plays out. But that's kind of the main perspective. I prefer it like this more. I like this look a little bit more personally. But the point is it's a similar outcome, right? The overall outcome is pretty similar. They both result in the same thing as long as they're not nullified, I guess you can say. And yeah, so that's what I'll be looking for. So again, to the downside, my main targets, if we lose 270s, I do think we'll see probably closer to the mid to low 260s, maybe even peek our head into the 250s ever so slightly and retest this, this area right here that we obviously had a massive area of resistance over here, come back, retest that, and then make our way higher. That is still technically a possibility that I shouldn't fully discount, but regardless, whether it does this or whether just from here decides to blast off, right? The point is that they both paths lead higher, right? That's my point I'm trying to make. Both paths, in my opinion at least, do lead higher for Tesla into the 300s again, right? That's kind of my current expectations, especially with the robotaxis, just around the corner. There's, usually a lot of FOMO and hype leading into these kind of events, especially if, we start getting more announcements and more hypeness from Elon, etc. That's usually how these things play out. So let's see if that actually happens this time or not, but I believe it will. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And to the upside, right? Again, like I said, the main levels, I would honestly just say that, yeah, okay, you have this kind of 278 to 280 level. That is level number one, but I would be more confident with a break about this kind of, let's just say 285 to make it simple. And even more so if we break above this this level right up here that's rejected us many times, closer to 295. These are the three main levels to the upside that can potentially reject Tesla short term for a retracement before, in my opinion, an explosion higher. But again, the point I'm trying to make is the fact that regardless of the path it takes, whether it's this path here, whether it's up higher and then this path, whether it's up here and then maybe a retest of the flag and then higher, the point is that the fact that they all, in my opinion, ultimately lead higher. So that's the main thing I'll be gonna, paying attention to, and that's the main thing I'll be eyeballing. That's the main thing I'm seeing, I guess you can say. So yeah, let's see how that plays out in the coming days and weeks. But I do believe that is the more likely outcome than not, personally speaking. Options flow on Tesla stock, nice little bullish flow actually towards the end of the day. We like to see that. That's always a nice sign to see. But not a lot though, right? Some weekly calls coming in over here. You can see 0509, right? But again, nothing crazy. We got some more for next week as well for 295, actually pretty nice to see as well, but nothing really just completely and utterly standing out to me. Again, it's surprisingly muted. I'm not gonna lie, it's surprisingly muted right now. The options flow is a little bit on the slower end of things for sure, compared to what usually is. But once Tesla does blast off, you would expect options to really start kicking in and ramping much more aggressively. That wouldn't surprise me. In terms of confirmed bearish or bullish flow, Tesla is on a close to 5 million confirmed bearish flow. Also, again, pretty muted, nothing crazy, very, very minimal. But yeah, nonetheless, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.